Now then, welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I'm not down the corner. I'm now around the other side of the car. I've decided to make a start on the C-post, as I mentioned in the last video. Yeah, let's have a look. So I'd already removed the vinyl from this side a few weeks ago now, basically just to see how bad things were underneath. And now that I've linished back the paint, there's a couple of areas of rust that I've got some rust eater on and rust treatment stuff that need to be addressed. So before I can do any painting or prep work, I really need to get rid of that first. The rest of the panel has held up really well. There's not really much that I need to do with this one. I could probably linish that back a little bit more, but these are pretty good, to be fair. The other side I am going to need to do a bit of work on there due to rust and water ingress. So you can obviously see there, that's where the water has run along and got behind the trim and the vinyl, and it's just sat there and it's made nice little tiny holes. These are fillable, they're not too big for me to worry about, so everything's fillable there. And obviously I'll smooth everything back and put the trim back on once it's painted. As an interesting little side note that I've just noticed, and I'm not sure if you can pick that up, this roof guttering looks like it was brazed on from the factory. So that's probably why we don't have roof gutterings on modern cars anymore, because someone had to do the painstaking task of brazing them on. Interesting. Not. Stay tuned. And with the miracle of the pause button, that's my P40 hardened and linished back. So now it's time to mix some filler. So there'll be filler going in places there, and up here also, and also up here. I'm not worried too much up here because the trim, there is a piece of black trim that goes up there. I might not be putting it back on, I'm not sure. I might need to, just because of where the roof joins this part of the panel. It's not a very good finish, and really we need to break the line up between the brown and the black. So I'll probably put this piece of trim that sits under here, I might put that back on. More details in a bit. So looking at how this sits, I think I will need to put it back on, because as you can see there, the join of the roof does literally just sit just underneath there, and I think it would be a good idea to fit these back on, because that will hide that join and also break up where my paint will be. Obviously this will need to be repainted, which will be done in a future video or later on in a bit, who knows. Now then, onto the filler. Right, that is probably, oh, if I put my two fingers there, that's all that is wide, and is only probably a finger deep. That is a tiny bit of filler, even though it's still probably too much. Mix your filler bit by bit, because it's no point wasting it, because it goes off, and it's what, 14 quid for 15 quid for the decent sized tin. So don't waste it. That little red dot is the hardener there, and that is as much as you need for that size amount of filler. So if you're going to use as they say, a golf ball size glob of filler, you only need a pea-sized amount of hardener, and even that might be too much, but it's what I can work with, because it has gone a little bit cold now, so I don't need to worry about it going off too quickly, because it will go off quickly in a hotter climate. And that is all the filler that I've mixed for this occasion, and I'm using bit of cardboard, but if it's a cardboard box, use the shiny side to mix it on, because what happens is the dark side goes very damp and it absorbs all the moisture from your filler. And as you can see there, when I've done the P40, I mixed way too much. Hey-oh, there you go. So let's go and get this slapped on the car quickly before it starts to harden. Working quickly and with the tiniest amount. So just smooth it on and don't play around with it too much. Yes, I'm using a metal spatula or scraper, whatever you want. I like metal ones because they've got a nicer straight edge to them when they're clean, that is. But that's as much as filler as I want on there. I don't want to go loading it all up like that and get gobs of filler on there, because you've got to take all that back off. So you put it on and literally scrape it all back off, because you're only filling the low spots of the panel. And it's no problem to mix a little bit more up later on if I need to, but don't put too much on. Don't be overzealous with it. Don't try and think, oh, if I put more filler on now, I haven't got to do as much later on. You will be wrong, because the more you put on, you'll probably find you get air bubbles in it as well. And so you put it on, scrape it off, put it on, scrape it off. And even though it's cool, it has started to go off already, but this was just purely for a demonstration purpose of to keep you informed. I don't know, from you viewers, I don't know what your level of, I don't know, competence or what kind of work you do on cars and that kind of thing, but judging by some comments, some people don't do this kind of thing. They pay somebody else to do it, which is absolutely fine. I just choose not to, and I choose to do it all myself because I'm tight, kind of. Right, okay, so that's my first bit of filler onto the C-post on the right hand side of the car for now. While that's drying off, I've took the liberty of just taking a rattle can and I've put a bit of brown paint on the floor there. So that's that done. I can put the carpet back, I can put some foam back. Later on I can put the bungs in and that kind of thing. So again, we're still moving forward. So while this filler's going off, I'm going to go around the other side of the car and start to linish that side off as well, and obviously do the same there, take care of any rust and add a bit of filler if need be and get that side all ready. Like I said earlier, while you're doing this kind of thing, it's wise to have something else to do, because I'm only literally spending 2 minutes on this panel per time, and it's a case of, right, put a bit of filler on, let it dry, go and have a cup of tea, that kind of thing. So I'm doing both sides at the same time, so I'm not going to bore you to death with, oh, we've just done one side, now I'm doing the other. I ain't going to bother. I'm just going to concentrate on this one side. I don't want it getting a bit repetitive, like just for that kind of thing, for entertainment value, whatever. So yeah, while that's drying off, I've got that to do on the other side, and then I think I might go and have a tea. See you in a little bit. And we're back again. Right, so from the last update, or early on in the video, you'll see that I was applying some filler to this panel. Please bear with me, I've had a couple of weeks off from recording because I've come down with the flu, as mentioned in the last comments in the last video, and I was pretty rough. Weather turned nasty and I wasn't able to carry on and do any more work, so work had to be halted. Oh well, it's one of them things. And as you can see, the trees are starting to go a bit bare, so I'm fighting against leaves and things like that. So right, what we're going to do now is spin you around. Over there. Right, so my filler has hardened, it's dried off, and I've quickly rubbed it back the other night. I didn't bother recording, you don't want to see me messing around with the sander. So I'm masked back up again now, so I could keep adding filler to these till I'm blue in the face, and when you think you've got it all right, when the filler shrinks back, you find that you're seeing all your work done again. Oh, here's one of the doggies. This is Toby. You alright, mate? Good boy. Come to give us a hand. Right, so this is a trick that I learned years and years and years ago when I was doing a little bit of work in a body shop, stroke garage. Oh, here's the other one. This is Rubio. He's a rescue from Spain. He's 8 years old, very shy, very timid. We've had him 3 years, but we're getting there. Anyway, right, as I was saying. So the little trick is basically to add primer to this, let it go off, and then any little dimples and imperfections will show up through the primer. And there's another little trick you can do as well, which is if you've got obviously I'm putting on a grey primer for this for the black. Now what I will do is use I've got loads of tins of matte black or gloss black, anything like that. I've got loads of them. So what I'm going to do is, once the primer's on and dried off, I will then just give it a light dusting, a very light dusting of black or red, whatever, doesn't matter, whatever colour you like, so that when you come and then rub this back, any low spots in the paintwork or in the primer will show up, and that is where you add your filler. I'll demonstrate that as the video goes on, so just a quick explanation as to what I intend to do. So I'm just going to carry on and finish masking up. I've still got a little bit to do, and I'll see you in a little while. And as usual, when you're spraying paint outside, you get these little blighters. The first thing that most people attempt to do is get the fingernail and try and pick it off. Word of advice, just leave it. It's not even worth messing around with, because once you come and rub that down with a bit of very fine wet and dry, that will actually come off and polish out. And if you need to, you can add a little bit of filler or a bit more primer just to hide it and blend it back in. I don't need to add as much filler as I thought that I would do, actually, to be fair. I've not put the black on yet. I'm going to let this dry off, and obviously I'm then just going to give it a fine rub over with some wet and dry, very fine wet and dry. I'm probably going to use 2000 grit on that, because I don't need to take anything off. I just need to key it. That's all I need to do. So as you can see there, I've added a very light dusting of black. Now once this has dried off, what I'll do now then is I'll rub this over with some very fine wet and dry. I'll probably do it wet, and then basically to try and take all that black back off. But obviously I'll be doing it as flat as I can, and then what it'll do is any low spots or high spots will show up. A low spot will show up as black, obviously. It will still be there, and I won't be able to sand it out with any ease. There are a couple of marks up there that I can already see that need a little bit of work doing, i.e. just a skim of filler, or just probably go a little bit overzealous with the wet and dry and smooth that back out. But that panel, from that first one coat of filler that you see me do earlier, which was a very fine wipe on, wipe off, it's had plenty of time to cure. And what I've used is an etch primer, because obviously there was bare metal there. So if there's bare metal, you really don't want to be using a normal primer, because it won't actually etch itself into the metalwork. It'll come off quite easily. Obviously this is not a panel that's going to get much in the way of damage or abrasion through, you know, sort of car park tins or anything like that, so it shouldn't be much of a problem anyway. But the intention is to get it looking as good as possible, i.e. I don't want it looking pretty crap, and I don't want to see any repairs. So that there is a couple of areas just up here that I'm going to attend to, because once you start putting on your top coat and your final coat, anything that you don't get right in your prepping stage will show up in your final stage, and it takes a lot more work to get out. I mean, okay, I've got plenty of time to do this. I can take as long as I want and just take videos as and when, but I do want to try and get this done as soon as, because I'd like to see this car back on the road towards the end of this year if I can, you know, so that next year we can go out and show it off as we used to do many moons ago. So yeah, now once this is dry, I'll let it dry now, and then I'll come back and I'll show you then what I'm going to do in a little while. Just while I think about it, and as I mentioned a couple of seconds ago, that's actually dry already, and it's been no more than 4 or 5 minutes since I've done that. So I'll give it another 5 minutes and I'll just go over it very lightly with the 1500 grit, wet and dry, just to keep back a little, and then add another coat. So I'm using a P1500 grit, wet and dry, used wet, and a little bit of water with some washing up liquid in it. Washing up liquid helps for the paper to glide, because sometimes if you don't use washing up liquid in it, it doesn't need to have a lot, just a bit. What happens is the paper grips and it scrunches up really tightly, and then you get these little points here that dig right into your paint and all that. So you want to keep it your paper as flat as possible. Ideally you'd use a sanding block or like a rubber pad. I've been doing this for years, and I've used basically, you use your fingers, these parts of your fingers, not your tips, not your hand, not your palm. You use these fingers, and how you go is a cross that way. Now go up and down, because again, when you go up and down, you'll be using that part of your finger to put all the pressure on. So you want to go sideways, or if you're going to go upwards, you'll go that way. So all I want to do is rub back this black paint. Yes, I know it looks like it's taking a while, but it isn't. I'm not putting any pressure on. I'm basically just moving the paper up and down. Always keep it wet. So you don't want to be watching this for 10-20 minutes. You're going to get bored, because I'm bored already. So I'm going to rub this back, and then I'll show you where all the low and the high spots are going to be. So I've not rubbed down the whole panel at this stage, because actually down here looks quite good. I can probably just leave this alone, but there's a couple of areas here that are going to need a little bit of work. So you can see here there's a slight gouge, and then there's this dark area here with a light area there. So basically that's the high spot, and these here is the low spot. And as you can see here, there are a couple of low spots here and here. Probably I can do one of two things. I mean, wait for the train and cut and action. So I can either continue to rub this down till that all becomes nice and grey again, which I'll probably do, or I can stop and add some filler. I really want to get as much as this out as I can. I mean, there's a couple of little marks there that are really dark, and some much more darker areas up here. For the time being, I think I'm going to continue to rub this down to see how much of this does actually come out. And there you can see is a high spot, because it's nicely polished, but there's also a low spot there. So I think there as well, I'm going to continue to rub this down. Again, I'm not putting too much pressure on it. I'm not using an over abrasive paper. It's just a very light dusting, because I want to take this black dust back off as much as I can. So the more of this I get off, the smoother the surface will be. Looking down there, I've only give it a light rub. Obviously here there's some high spots, which that may have been in either in the primer, I don't know. So I'm going to continue to rub it down and see how much actually needs to come off, and to see if I do need to add a little bit of filler to these little places up here. So as I suspected, yeah, they did. These low spots basically did just buff out. Up here I'm not going to worry too much, because the trim goes along here anyway, and it will get hidden. But either way, I'm going to give it another coat of primer and just rub it back in, because these little areas aren't that deep, and I don't think they're going to show up, to be fair. Yeah, pretty good. So I'm just going to give this I don't need to key that, it's already been done when I flatted it back anyway, so I can just go over this now and give it another coat of primer, and I'll let it harden off now for a few hours, which will probably be a couple of days in terms of reality, but in terms of the video it'll be 5 minutes, and you'll see me then start to put the black on in a little while. See you in a bit. I was right, it is the next day. So last night I added a coat of primer, and I basically just left it overnight, and obviously through today to dry off properly. Now I've just given it a little key with the wet and dry. Use 1500 grade wet and dry, which I'll show you here. It's turn it round, there we go, that's all I use. Just, and it's you can see that it's the wrong way around obviously because I'm on the front camera, but anyway, that's 1500 grit, and it's very worn. There's hardly any abrasive on there, so I do keep a lot of used wet and dry. I don't throw it away unless it's silky smooth. It doesn't matter what grade it is, I always keep it, because I always find it comes in useful later on. So the panel now is and that's ready now for me to add the first coat of black. I'll do exactly the same as I did earlier on when I showed you when I put a light coat on to find the highs and the lows. I'll do exactly the same again. I'll start off with a very light coat, and then we'll just let that dry. The reason why I do very light coats, I mean, I can if I wanted to, I could get a real good covering on it, but then because I'm working outside, I'll run the risk of the paint not drying quick enough and it starts to run, and also the chances of these little blighters, because we've got so many trees that give out these horrible little seeds, and they really do just get everywhere, so I don't really want them sticking to me paint at this stage. So that's why I do light coats, and it's fine to do it that way, build up, you know, light coat after light coat. Not only that, when you put a light coat on, it also dries much quicker, and you'll find by the time I've probably done, if I was to do if I would be doing a complete wing, by the time I go from one side of the wing to the other side will be virtually dry with just a very, very light coat. So sit back, relax, and I'll film some more in a bit. Hang on. And as if by magic, there we go, there's a light coat. That literally took me 20 seconds. Just if anybody's interested, I'm using Simonized acrylic satin black in a rattle can. I've used it before, it's really good paint, to be honest. Plumbing trains, didn't want to go past a minute ago on the video. Anyway, yeah, I've used it before, it goes on really well. It lasts it's quite durable. You can work with it, and it dries fairly quickly, so there's nothing sticking to this at the time being, so I'm just going to hang around here, and then when it's dry enough, I'm just going to add another coat, so it'll look a bit better than that in a minute. As you can see, there's still a little bit of primer showing through there. It looks a bit grainy and bitty, and what the hell's going on here? Oh, camera error. There we go. It looks a little bit grainy and bitty. Don't worry about that for now, because if I need to, satin black does dry really really smooth anyway, along with matte black. You don't really need to mess around with it after you've got it on. With satin black, if you polish it up too much, it just ends up being like gloss black, which I don't really want. But then I don't want it as dull as matte black, because the rest of the door frames are a satin black, not a matte black. So Basically what I will be doing is just adding light coat after light coat, and I'll probably just wet and dry it in between coats, just to take all the high spots off, so it doesn't go too what's the word I'm looking for, mottly if you like, or dimply. I want to try and keep it as smooth as possible. So once it's dried off, I'll just quickly flat it back. There's no point me showing you that on video. I'd might as well just, you'll see it, you know, there'll just be a much more nicer coat on in a little while. I bet you're getting bored now, aren't you? Because I am. So as it's drying off, it's now starting to dull slightly. If you look in this area here, you can see my reflection there, and it's still quite shiny, and it is quite dimply. I'm not sure if the camera's picking this up from what I can see, but as it's starting to dry now, the paint is starting to shrink back. So there's places like little areas here that's actually starting to really dry off, and it's starting to go dull. So it just looks like it's had a crap coat, really. And it looks like I've hardly put none on there and put loads on there, and it's all drying hiddledy-piddledy. But basically, yeah, that is what I've done. I've gone a little bit heavy here, basically because that's a corner, and if you take wind flow into account and stone chips and stuff, here's probably will be where anything flicked up will probably hit first. So I have gone a little bit heavier here, and bear in mind I've had to do inside the door there, so a lot of did spray it over, if you like, but it's okay because I can see that it's drying and it is dulling off nicely. I did just have to question whether I picked up the right tin and didn't use gloss. I'm thinking, oh, have I just ruined it all? But no, it was satin that I used, and as I look at it now, it is going dull and it's losing its shine. Obviously it's not going to be as dull as matte. Matte's very dull, it doesn't give off any shine at all, whereas satin does give a little bit of a sheen, but not too much. If you leave satin long enough, it goes as dull and horrible as matte, I suppose. But the beauty with satin is if you add a little bit of back to black, and it brings it shiny but not as shiny as gloss. I'm liking the result of that so far, so more in a bit. This was a full cup of coffee when I started editing this last video. It's now empty and cold. So anyway, we're done. This video has been a nightmare to do, simply because it's took me about 3 weeks to get this little bit of footage. In between work, the flu, and not being bothered to do anything, it's been a frustrating one. So as of late, I've only had about an hour after work to get some work done. By the time I come around to do some editing, if you like, or videoing of it, the light was going, so I had to delay that for the next day. So everything has just slowed down to a bit of a crawl, but I've got a good weekend ahead of me. I'm not editing this out, I'm carrying on. I'm all tongue-tied and everything, and I think I'm on about the take 10 or something now just for this ending bit. So right, let's do the final reveal. Right, here we go. I hope you like it. I hope you like how it's turned out. There, we're done. I added a top coat last night. I managed to get a top coat on, that dried in good time, and I managed to get the trim bonded on. Not riveted as it should be. I've chose to bond it, and the only thing I've got left to do is just to put a little bit of sealant around the top and the bottoms of the trims, just to make sure no water gets in there and it doesn't start rusting again. But I hope, I don't believe this, another train being passed over there. Every time I do some recording, just how it goes. It's TV for you. Yeah, so anyway, I'm done here for a bit. I've got more work to do and I want to get cracking. So thank you everybody for the comments and the likes so far, and please continue to watch, and I will continue to make these videos. All right, admittedly now footage is getting a little bit short. We're relying on weather, and obviously the nights are drawing in, so I'm probably just going to do as much as I can now during the weekend. So I need to get the front up in the air, get them suspension units off, so once those come back I can get this old girl put back on the wheels and get her moving. And then we can roll on and do some other stuff. In the meantime, I've got to get underneath the rear panel to weld up, which I'll more than likely take some footage of and that kind of thing. So just to, you've seen me weld before, you've seen all the welding before on the other side of the car. I've still got that wheel arch to finish off. So there's plenty of footage in the pipeline. It all just comes down to when I can record it, time allowing and weather allowing. But anyway, I hope you're all enjoying this series so far. I'm enjoying doing it. This one has been frustrating, I will admit, but I hope you're enjoying it. I really do. And for me, it's been it's given me a lot of encouragement to continue to do it, with all your comments and your likes and views and things. Please continue to do so. It's fantastic. And once again, thank you, Ricky, for allowing me to do this. Brilliant. So take care, everyone. Stay safe and all that. Wear your mask. Take care and be good to each other, and we will see you soon. Have fun. Bye. Finally done it. Yes. That was about 8 times I've deleted this video. See ya. Bye.